On July 4th, 1776, America claimed its independence from Great Britain. Abraham Lincoln would say his momentous words in the Emancipation Proclamation that all men were created equal. During this time, however, African Americans were still subject to enslavement. To say America gained its independence on July 4th would be to say every American was free from oppression, and that was far from the truth. Why did America gain their independence? America as a whole would not gain its independence until June 19th, 1865.
This world is one great battlefield with forces all array. If in my heart I do not yield, I'll overcome someday. I'll overcome someday. I'll overcome someday. If in my heart I do not yield, I'll overcome someday.
Juneteenth, aka Freedom Day, aka Jubilee Day, is a state holiday in many states. Can we get to a point where June 19th is not only a state holiday, but a federal holiday like July 4th across all 50 states? We believe with education and awareness, we can, and every American, white, brown, black, can acknowledge our horrific history and celebrate our liberation as a whole.
Like the Civil War itself, slavery didn't end with one decisive act. After the Battle of Antietam in September 1862, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in January 1863. It declared all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states to be free. Northern abolitionists welcomed the proclamation as a first step, while Southern slave owners ignored it. Ending slavery would take a constitutional amendment passed in January 1865, Robert E. Lee's surrender at Appomattox in April 1865, the heroism of many enslaved families, and the Union Army itself to personally deliver the news to the most remote corners of the conquered Confederacy.
The proclamation that Lincoln signed didn't find its way into Texas, which is where my father's family is from, and the Rambo family, until mid-June of 1865.
On June 19th, Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston and personally delivered the news.
The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor.
There was a lot of celebration, but there was also a lot of sadness, a lot of concern, a lot of fear. Both enslaved Africans and those who held slaves didn't know what really to do now. As freed Americans, where were we to go?
"150 years later, June 19th is a day of remembrance and celebration.
I think my first Juneteenth celebration was when I was 6 or 7, because I remember roasted ears of corn. And this was in Austin, Texas. And then coming here, I was surprised and really astounded to find out that Minneapolis, St. Paul have such a strong connection with Juneteenth. It stands to reason with the number of people who probably migrated this far north who brought with them that tradition.
Every year in Texas, Minnesota, and around the country, Juneteenth is marked with music, food, and fellowship.
We are celebrating at Mississippi Regional Park. There's all ages here. I just see all kinds of people and colors.
It's amazing to me that, especially among the African American culture, we have a little bit of a fear of embracing that history, because there's some shame connected to slavery. I don't feel that way. I feel that that is such an important part of who I am as a person. The strength that I have within me comes from that struggle.
African American Independence Day. So we're celebrating. Yep. Our day of liberation. Our day of liberation.
It's important to have opportunities for us to celebrate our oneness, our wholeness, our completeness, our dynamic selves. It's vital to African American people to have an opportunity, a date that heralds the importance of who we are as a people, what we've been through as a people.
Juneteenth gives African American communities a chance to reflect on their ancestors' struggles and achievements, and also to spotlight current issues.
There is a lot going on in this world. There's a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, and a lot of uneasiness. The foundation you have can kind of give you a little bit more of a sure footing, because you can look and say, well, wait, my family made it through this hatred. Somehow they made it through. Yeah, so take that strength and go up to the next level.
I love seeing the support that I get every year. It's always new people I'm meeting and hopefully collaborating with them so we could have Juneteenth and not let it die. It's so important.
If in my heart I do not yield, I'll overcome someday.
Good morning, Alyssa. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, and thank you so much for joining us for this commemoration of our Juneteenth celebration. A very significant holiday in American history, but somewhat overlooked. Why don't we start with say your name for our audience and tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name's Alyssa Parker-Geisman.
My name is Jahde Huntley.
My name is Michael Clarke.
My name is Kara. I'm a nurse practitioner. These are my three daughters, Madeline, Lorraine, and Isabel.
I grew up in the suburbs of Boston and then went to school down in Miami.
Positions in pharmacy, pharmacy tech in a hospital, and in oncology pharmacy.
I am an educator and life coach.
I also do. I'm also a DJ, weddings, etc.
I work with youth between the ages of 4 through 10 or 11 currently, but I have experience working with elementary through higher education students.
We are I guess like an integrated, multicultural, biracial family. My husband is from Jamaica.
I also am a real estate agent.
And then I, among the course of my work, have been all over this country. But here I find myself in New York City, living, working, playing here.
I'm Madeline. I'm in 9th grade, and I play on a travel lacrosse team.
Oh yes, you won MVP the other day, right?
No, Isabel won.
Oh, is she right? Okay, congrats, guys. Okay, Isabel.
I'm Isabel. I'm 16 in 10th grade.
Okay, and
I'm Lorraine. I'm 10 years old, and I'm in 5th grade.
Okay. My name is, I have a very long name actually, but my name is Saywa Cardrington. I was born Sandra Carol Yvonne Warner Codrington, and then as life progressed and I understood that all of those names were given to us by our slave masters, I decided that I wanted to have a traditional name, but I didn't want to look in a book. So I waited until I was able to meet somebody who could name me traditionally. And the first people that were able to do that were some nanas from Ghana, some priests from Ghana. And so they did the exploration. They shadowed me, they read me, and I was given the name Afua Sewaa. So I go by Afua Sewaa Codrington. according to the tradition, everyone has one of the names that of the day of the week that they were born on. And Sewaa actually means, well, that's a very long story, and I don't know if you want to hear that long story, but basically, Sewaa means a woman with power and control. And usually that was the name given to the Queen Mother, who actually was the one who was the advisor to the king, the Ashanti king. It was his mother that actually was ruling behind the scenes. So all of the women within the royal family who even had an opportunity to perhaps become a queen mother, one of their names was Sewaa, which means the woman with power and control, or the manipulator, but in a positive way, because they were behind the scenes taking care of business.
When were you first aware of Juneteenth as a holiday and the history behind it?
I have to say, recently, I've heard it. I've heard the Juneteenth. I've heard it over the years, but only within probably the last couple of years, with a large emphasis last year. You know, with everything that was happening, you know, within the pandemic and George Floyd and all that stuff. Yeah. So I didn't really dig into it until, to be honest, like last year.
Right.
That's when I realized, you know, what was going on, you know, kind of where it stemmed from, etc.
I think it's important for kids these days to know their foundation, know the past, and bring sort of a cooler, hip spin to it. The term Juneteenth to sort of make it more interesting and you know, up to the times for kids nowadays. Something they can read about and know their foundation, know their past, so they can know how to apply it in recent events going on today.
It's just like 4th of July. It's like, you know, but we celebrate 4th of July, we celebrate the independence, but not everybody was independent because they were still slaves in America. So it's just kind of like recognizing, you know, that fact and kind of getting the right history.
When I think about it, I have to admit my own ignorance for the celebration of Juneteenth, and not now, but before my experience in New York City. Like, I hadn't heard of it. It was never brought up in school. In those circumstances where you're living your life and you don't know what you don't know, right? But I recently learned about it while here in New York City. And I think it represents for me the ongoing struggle of a segment of the American population for what freedom means, what equality means, and the long way that this country has to go in order to really reconcile with its history and make sure that everybody's included and that we move together. We Americans all move forward together. So I think that that's what Juneteenth has come to mean to me.
It's been, in this country, it's been over a century that Juneteenth has not really been celebrated for a number of reasons. You know, it's been systematically erased in certain ways. It was erased by our history not being reflected in the textbooks. And like in the early 1900s, when people went from homeschooling to public schooling, all of the things that were passed down from one generation to the other inside of homeschooling, that stopped. You know, and then also when people moved to during the 1920s and the early 1930s, during the Depression, and many of our people in this country moved from rural areas in the South to urban cities. We weren't allowed to celebrate those things. We weren't given time off to celebrate that. So if it wasn't on a weekend or we didn't celebrate, and so it got lost in the source. So I had to do research. I'm first generation growing up in this country. My family is from Montserrat and St. Kitts, and partly Barbados and Trinidad. You know, so I'm first generation growing up here, and I actually heard the term in the I would say maybe in the late 1970s. which now puts a little age on me here, but I heard that term, and then I began to research it, and it was like maybe in the 1980s and 90s that I started to really understand more about Juneteenth.
So, Saywa, tell us, what does Juneteenth mean to you?
Well, Juneteenth is a time for rejoicing and celebrating, but that is not the most important thing to me. Juneteenth is an important time for reflection and for renewal. We use Juneteenth as a time for assessing where we are as a people, reflecting on our past, thinking about ways to improve our present condition, and planning for our future. It is definitely a time for us to recollect, to recall to mind, trying to recover our knowledge of our collective self-memory. It's not just what we remember during the span of our lives, but it's a recollection that results from intergenerational trauma, which is the transmission of our historical oppression and its negative consequences upon us as a people across the generations.
Juneteenth was always something that was celebrated in the community that rarely, right? And so I learned that as the independence of enslaved Africans, not July 4th, but instead Juneteenth, which is short for June 19th. June 19th was always celebrated in the community that I grew up in. It was always celebrated in my household. So it is the day of emancipation for enslaved Africans here in the United States. So it is looked at as Independence Day, really and truly. And so that's what it means to me. Juneteenth is a massive celebration. It's to be celebrated. It's for education of those who don't know what it's about. It is for unity, really about unification and celebration of our Africanness, of our Blackness, of our likelihoodness, and just really an opportunity for us to also remember what has come and what has happened before us, that it is not our stopping point, but it is a point in our lives. It is a point in the lives of enslaved Africans. And it's something to note, but not live there, and continue to move forward, pay reverence, and still continue to move forward. So taking the torch and continuing to go and pass it along.
What were your thoughts not knowing that piece of history and actually just finding out about it?
The way I felt when I really found out, by the time I really found out, not in my late 30s, I'm like, this is a problem that continues to perpetuate, continues to happen over and over. I didn't learn much about, Black history until my senior year in college. Mm-hmm. Things that are history, things that are a part of our history for everybody. Mm-hmm. I feel like in this country, especially, we don't get that knowledge. It's not presented. It's not complete. Mm-hmm. And if we get it, it'll be in higher education. And to me, it was towards the end of my college, and that was just a random class I took. It wasn't even part of the main curriculum. Meanwhile, we're taking politics and history and all this kind of stuff. Plenty of opportunities to at least be made aware of what this stuff is, but they don't exist.
It's interesting that you said that this is something that you were reared with in your household and mm-hmm. in your community, right? You and I are the same age. Now, I know that our age group, that might not have been everybody's story.
So going to school in the summertime, if I were here, everyone's like, Happy Independence Day. As a child, my mom would be like, that's not Independence Day. She was very clear cut about it. And I'm like, well, everybody's celebrating, and we had to have really clear conversations as a 4-year-old child about Independence Day, what that means, and Independence Day, what that means for Black people. And I'm using the term Black very loosely, but just a representation of all people of African descent, So as a child, maybe I didn't really have those conversations because I felt maybe really secure in the community that I had and know that we would always get together for Juneteenth. So I would be very excited. But I think as I got older and as I began to really like divulge and research history, American history, which really excited me, it was a little challenging to have conversations about Juneteenth or about Independence Day not being the day of freedom for Black people, you know, and just the looks of dismay or just the dismissive natures surrounding it. It didn't deter me, but it also allowed me to understand that we kind of have a ways to go, you know, and that it's no judgment on anyone who doesn't share my beliefs or doesn't share their history and understand that. It was more of, I really had moments of sadness sometimes where I'm just like, damn, we're really disconnected and we don't know. So how can we, you know, bridge the gap? Yeah. So there were challenges, but in college, it was full gung ho. There was no way that I could allow anyone to say something like that and not really understand the true nature behind July 4th and June 19th, 1865.
What are your thoughts on New York making it a state holiday, something that they did just last year? So it's a state holiday, but let me know your thoughts.
Well, I'm very glad that it's acknowledged, but it's long time coming. It's long time coming, and I think that it's really great because many of us in this country, as children of African people, still are not aware of what Juneteenth is all about.
I don't like it. I think like it had to take a person dying of color to finally make it a holiday. I feel like it should have always been a holiday and celebrate. I feel like it had to take taking of a life for it to officially become a holiday and people finally recognize it. I feel like it should have always been recognized and celebrated.
And the police, the problems with, police brutality and the killing of our young men and women, and not just men, but women as well, to bring that to the forefront during a time of where we were many people reflecting, not just us as a people, but the whole country, because everybody was on shutdown and they had no way of avoiding those realities. They actually had to, were able to see them on camera, and it brought people into a different frame of mind where I think that it's a good thing because it brings it to the forefront, not just for us as a people, but for other people as well. The injustices and the oppression and the inequities of this society.
So I think that it's a step in the right direction, right? In recognizing it, to acknowledge that there was a delay in freedom. There was a delay in, I think that in this day and age, American society is now trying to ask the questions and have that dialogue surrounding, what is equality? Why haven't we achieved it yet as a society? And so I think that in naming something, in acknowledging it, is an important first step. By no means I think it should be a final step, but I think that it's a good first step.
So to me, it makes the most sense because awareness, I think, is the main thing. Especially obviously as a Black person myself, the awareness is what will lead to change and also lead to making sure that certain things don't necessarily happen again.
I'd like to see domestic change of how people of African descent are treated. So the holiday, I think it's great for those who need to feel connected and feel as though, yes, we are being acknowledged. But for me, it doesn't change much because we've been here. We're generations in, and the treatment doesn't, there's no equity. Equity is lacking in our treatment. So a holiday could be a start. I'm interested to see what happens as the years progress. A state holiday, okay. I would like to really see some extreme reform in how Black people are treated in America. And which is also another thing. I didn't go to school on Juneteenth. I didn't go to school on Juneteenth. I didn't go to school on Black Solidarity Day. So I think that is because my mom took those as opportunities for us to be at home and reflect and learn and discuss and, really build with one another. And so I think that if there are other families that wanted to, that were doing that, this is great, in which their child isn't missing a day of school, and it's an opportunity for them to learn. So I'm hoping that because Juneteenth, is now a state holiday, that we as Black people will take opportunities to engage in Juneteenth celebrations and festivities, etc. I come from a Caribbean household, and Juneteenth isn't necessarily something that was spoken about when my parents were growing up, right? I'm not really certain if my dad really knew or even understood the importance. If it hadn't been for my mom, and I think I don't want to misquote, but my mom might not even have known much about it until we were maybe toddlers. And she might have heard about it through someone and brought us to an event. And so I want to speak about that other part, being of Caribbean descent, and there being a gap, ignorance on our end of also being in a country that also experienced enslaved people, and not, there being a disconnect. And that too, I can understand for others who you come as first generations or your second generation even, and you're completely oblivious to that's going on. So I don't anyone who is extremely new for, there's no pressure. Your black card is not revoked because you didn't know or you just learned about it, and maybe the first year you're just looking up something on the internet. That's more than enough. Yeah. Don't ever feel discouraged and feel like because I'm not out there doing all the things that the masses are doing, it's okay. It's really about your edification, your understanding, so that you can pioneer for your family in the way in which you want to go.
In raising awareness, and how does participating in how does that look for you?
Right. So literally any opportunity I get to just share it, like, hey, do you know what this is? Or, hey, what are you doing on this weekend or whenever it falls? Yeah, I'm doing this. I'm going to be doing a Juneteenth, blah, blah, blah. Oh, what's that? Tell them about it. So I just, casually at the very least, I guess when I'm a little bit more active, in social media, I can always share it that way. But just any little change, I think, is enough, because anything you do, even if it's to one or two people, you just don't know who you're doing it to and how that can affect others. Yeah. So that's my main thing. Just share it when I can, especially organically.
That was all I thank you. I mean, you coming on this platform was just one way, actually, too, of spreading the awareness and just agreeing to do that. Right. Thank you.
Yeah. So, what ways did we talk about, or did you guys learn about in school, ways that you can celebrate Juneteenth or bring more awareness to it to people who don't know about it? So, we're talking about supporting local businesses, supporting Black businesses. Their dad is has a Black-owned business and a business owner, entrepreneur. So we always wear his shirts, and we try to support Black business whenever we can. And what other ways can we celebrate that you guys can think of?
Like make people aware.
Yeah, you mentioned social media, right? You mentioned social
media. Like post stuff about it, because some people don't even know about the day until someone finally mentions it. Right. People need to know about it, and these days people look at their phones. So why would it not be a good idea to post it on social media? Because when they look at it on the social media, they probably want to learn more about it, or they can support it.
I think like even you guys agreeing to do this now is a way of bringing awareness, because it's just having these type of conversations, and we're trying to put it in a documentary so that people, like you said, Lorraine, so that we could put it on social media and people will be like, oh, what's Juneteenth? Oh, let me hear about it. Oh, let me find out about it. And people to not feel a way about not knowing.
Yeah, I think, I mean, even small actions like a quick post on Facebook on a personal page will be like, hey, happy Juneteenth. You know, you could partake in some celebrations here in New York City for sure. You could, you know, take a moment in educating your friends and family. I know that, like I said, like when my brother was like, hey, what's Juneteenth? He didn't demonstrate to me that he had any, like it seemed like he wanted a quick answer, right? And I can go on for like, you know, oh, Juneteenth was, you know, 1865 and the complete emancipation of emancipation of enslaved individuals on the federal level. Or, you know, I could get deeper in and see if he's willing to listen and have a conversation of, you know, Juneteenth is a symbol of the ongoing struggle of Black Americans, of African Americans, of people of African descent, right? Of being treated equally in American society, right? And then from there you can go down a rabbit hole of like, so we need to, you know, even me as a white American, I'm like, I need to relearn this history. I need to learn my part in it. And I don't mean that, you know, just today in 2021, but rather, you know, the legacy of people with my skin tone and playing a role in it. And it's, you know, my decisions, my words, my actions, and how that might be perpetuating a certain narrative or changing a narrative.
Okay, so for me, there's an organization, Caltech African Dance. Caltech African Dance Company is an organization that's been around for about 30 years. I've danced with them since I was a child. I left and returned, and so I'm really involved with them as an adult. And their key drive and mission is edutainment. So through dance, there's education. So every year in Bedford-Stuyvesant at the Restoration Plaza, building in that kind of like court square between Applebee's and I think there's a food town. Juneteenth, Caltech puts on a massive Juneteenth celebration. Free African dance classes, free classes that celebrate Black culture. Because it isn't only African dance. There's lion dancing. There's bomba. There's so many different Congolese dancing. There's so many things that they offer. There are vendors. There are shows that are free. And it's open to the community. Anyone can come. No one is turned away. So it is a big festival. It is a big celebration.
As a start. And so the questions were, you know, will you participate in raising awareness with Juneteenth? I mean, you could be like, I've been there, done that.
Well, will I participate? Yes. And if you are in the Brooklyn area on Saturday, June 19th, and you're free, come to Bedford-Stuyvesant, come to Restoration Plaza, and join us. Yes. We will practice social distancing. There are virtual things that are happening. And I can give you the information, or it's Caltech African Dance Company. You can just Google it. But there are tons of Juneteenth happenings and celebrations that are going on this year. So I will for sure be participating and spreading the word and bringing my students, getting these babies involved. So I'm going to be
the way I do it is through my organization, and I won't say it's my organization because many of us participate in it, but it's an organization that I co-founded with another sister 30 years ago, and I am a co-founder and the director of Caltech African Dance Company and School of African Dance. And the mission is to utilize the arts as a tool of empowerment, and to bring awareness and have cultural programs that actually are healthy for the body, mind, and spirit of us as a people. So we do have a Juneteenth celebration. This year will be our 11th annual Juneteenth celebration, and it'll be in the heart of Bed-Stuy. And basically what we do is we have economic empowerment by having an African marketplace. We have classes. We have health and wellness expo, because you cannot be empowered if you're not healthy enough to consciously and physically do the work of empowerment. So we have health and wellness for people of all ages, from children to seniors. We have classes. We have performances that are enlightening, and throughout all of that, there's always the message of empowerment. And when we talk about discussing our present, so we talk about the past, we give some history of us as a people, not just history from us as a people here in the United States, but even beyond that, because in our textbooks, our history starts with slavery here. It says nothing about who we were before we were taken away from our homeland. So, we talk about our history. We also talk about our current conditions. And we plan for the future. Like, for example, what are the current conditions right now? We're dealing with voter suppression. We're dealing with police brutality. We're dealing with injustices in the criminal justice system, employment and wealth inequity, problems in housing, healthcare. These are topics of discussion throughout the day. In between the entertainment and the edutainment, there's a message and discussion about the issues, and bringing people, making sure that people are aware. It's what are the goals and the tenets of Juneteenth? It's about planning for our future and improving our present. And this is what we do throughout the day.
Okay. This is the legacy of Juneteenth, the oldest nationally, but not federally recognized celebration of the end of slavery in the United States. It feels sometimes as if we've witnessed continued back-to-back devastation with the loss of Black bodies and Black lives. Lives cut too short too many times, be it at the hands of police brutality or reckless neighbors. But alongside the constant loss, we've seen consistent elevation.
The collective Black conscience of African Americans in particular has sadly become more awakened to the bumps in the road we face, it feels, for simply existing. Yet, through that awareness, we've reached moments of understanding and celebration. We've collectively come to join movements to celebrate our natural hair, our natural skin, and all of our natural selves. With that has been the celebration of our history, Juneteenth, an important marker of our progress and continued fight as a people. Once, for many unknown or misunderstood, Juneteenth was something discovered only in passing or maybe college classrooms. Now there's kids' TV shows, social media awareness, even growing political support for national recognition of the holiday, marking its importance and significance. The breaking of our literal chains marked a new beginning for Black people in America, and since then we've reached heights our ancestors only were able to dream of. Through starting conversations like these, we fully dismantle and break the metaphorical chains as well.
With the current climate we're living in, we want to acknowledge this day and remind ourselves of how far we've come. We let this day be a reminder of the obligation we have as citizens of this country to remove economic disparities that have affected this country since the first enslaved Africans touched American soil.
They say to know where you're going, you must know where you've been. Here at Northeast Winds Excursions and Tours, we're focused on community building, awareness, raising awareness for our neighbors who sometimes feel far away. Traveling from downstate to upstate is our focus. But since COVID-19, we're focused on how we could get creative. And through these virtual presentations, we have seen an opportunity to reach all of you on the topics we know you care about. We began through our first virtual presentation, our viewing of the African burial ground in Lower Manhattan. This is available on our website at newroadtourny.com, also on our YouTube page. We hope to see you on board, engaging in inspiring and motivational conversations as we go to visit charming places in our home state. Thank you.
The wind is our mantra. It's always there. Peace, y'all.
And that's a wrap.
This world is one great battlefield with forces all arrayed. If in my heart I do not yield, I'll overcome someday.